Hi, everyone. It's Ben from Greenlight Bookstore in Brooklyn. Thanks for tuning into Authors Spill the Beans. This is a series where we talk to authors who are writing for kids about what they do and how they do it.
My school stories.
Today, we're going to focus on using real life for fiction. So, taking experiences that you've had or that someone that you know has had and turning that into stories that you come up with your own imagination. We'll be talking today to author Beth Kephart, who has a new novel that came out a couple of weeks ago called The Great Upending. It's for middle graders, ages 8 to 12, or anyone that likes good storytelling and writing. It's the story of a girl named Sarah and her brother Hawk, who live on a farm in Pennsylvania that's struggling. There's a drought, there's a fire, they have financial problems, and Sarah also might need an expensive surgery to help with a medical condition that she has called Marfan syndrome. There's also a mysterious man named the Mister who's moved into the silo on the farm that they rent out, who they're not supposed to bother, but might end up helping them with some of their problems. As we talk to Beth today about using things in your own life that you see and hear and feel in your writing, think about things that are happening to you right now that might feel like good inspiration for writing a story. It could be about a family that's stuck indoors and discovers a mystery about one of their neighbors. There's so much going on around you and that you personally experience that can be the perfect starting point for coming up with the story and for having inspiration to be creative. Hi, Beth. Thank you for joining us for Author Spill the Beans.
I am so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. So today we're talking about using real life for fiction, which is something you know a lot about because you write a lot about your own life and in memoir form and using that for inspiration. And you also write a lot of fiction, including the book we'll mostly be talking about today, The Great Upending, your new middle grade novel, which has a lot in it that's based on real life and people you know or your experiences, like the main character and the conditions she lives with, and the farm setting, and the brother-sister dynamic. Anything else that I'm missing?
We'll get to it.
My first question for you is about using things in your life and your writing, how you remember that, whether you are constantly journaling and writing down notes and then coming back to that when you write, or whether instead you come down to write and you kind of just let your imagination and your memory take hold.
I wish, Ben, that there were a process. In this case, several things happened at once. I had met by phone a young woman named Becca, thanks to some corporate work I was doing. I was interviewing patients. And she was so beautiful in her spirit and in the way she spoke about her very extreme life with Marfan. She has a very extreme version of Marfan syndrome. And I sensed that she had so much to give to the world, but there she was, mostly in her room, looking forward to endless surgeries, hadn't been able to finish college, wasn't able to do the work she wanted to do, wasn't able to go down the street to the coffee shop. And I just was left with this, what can I do for her? And we continued to email, we continued to build this relationship, and I decided that the only thing I knew how to do for her was to write a book for her, not about her, but for her. And I, of course, asked her right away what she thought of such an idea, and she was happy to see where my mind went with that. Two other things, though. My husband and I run a memoir workshop, and the first landscape that we chose was this farm in Pennsylvania. And it is the landscape of the Great Upending is very much the landscape of the farm we experienced. And then the third thing is that Hawk, the brother, is based on, his character is based on one of my students, a past student, now someone who works at the University of Pennsylvania. And I always wanted to do something that captured that student's spirit. So what do you do with a girl you fall in love with, a landscape, and a student? And you know what? You write a lot of drafts before you know what it
Yeah.
is.
Well, you mentioned that you wanted to write a book for Becca and not necessarily about her.
Yeah.
And I wonder, how do you think about the difference between a book that would be nonfiction about someone specifically versus a book that's maybe inspired by them or based on them or more in tribute to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would never dare to write a book about Becca. She, even if it were biography, she's lived this life. If she could tell me about it, all that she has, but it would be unfair and unwise for me to imagine that I could capture her life. She's lived things that I will never be able to imagine. But I could imagine a version of Becca, a girl named Sarah, who doesn't have, she has a very demanding, critical condition with her own Marfan, but it's not Becca's situation. And into Sarah's life, I could bring this loving mother. Becca loves her mother. I could bring the cat that was Becca's cat. I could bring these small details of things that Becca loved, and then they were signifiers, and they were sort of gestures toward her. And Sarah goes on her own story. My characters are going to interact with the landscape and with each other in ways that Becca never would. So I think there's something in the fictional process that allows us to create and craft with the essence of people and with
Mm.
small triggers and details, but we're not trying to, have this great fidelity to the actual.
So do you feel like when you're writing a character that it's always partly based on someone you know or a combination of people you know, or do you ever feel like you're making someone up entirely?
I'm making a lot of them up entirely because my books are many peopled. They are also many generational books, so they will have a young girl and a younger kid and a mother and a grandfather and a neighbor. And so in this community, there might be one or two that are coming from, something that I've seen or felt or known, and the rest are imagined, but they're imagined in relationship to the known, there's that stretch.
So let's talk about the farm a little bit, because you said that was also based on something that you've experienced, a place that was important to you. And it sounds like you were inspired by a lot of the sights and sounds and things that were a part of that environment. And Sarah, your main character, is similarly kind of in love with the rich setting. What kind of things inspire you in your own life about where you are and your place to include in your writing?
I am very drawn to the outside world. I live in the suburbs, but I'm always seeking the window, the nearest window. Where's the moon? Where's the breeze?
I never seen a moon like that before.
Can I open the windows yet? I take an hour-long walk every day and try to get myself lost. I actually achieve this. I've lived this in this area and taken an hour-long walk forever, but about 3 days ago, I got lost, which was magical. I didn't understand how I did it, but I just kept going down this, and I was, wow, I don't know where I am right now. I also, experiencing the world, the natural world is important, but also the way we move through it, or at least the way I move through it. The rhythm of my sentences are very uh, related to the way I move when I walk. And so I take in what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, what the breeze is, what's happening in the tree. Is that a hawk? Oh yes, it's a hawk. Is that a fox? Let me stop and watch. Are those 4 deer? Maybe 5. I'm very much there, but my body is taking the rhythm in too as I'm walking.
Do you have aha moments? Do you have moments where you think, I just got inspiration for something that, based on something I saw or heard, that I know I'd want to include in something, and then you have to rush to write it down?
I think normal people would say yes to that question, but I'm so abnormal. Things take a long time to steep with me. It's never a direct glance, gotta use that.
Mm.
It's that if something just stays with me and stays with me, I start to ask myself, why are you obsessed with those children from RS? Why that girl in that red dress? What did she make you think? What did she make you feel? What kind of story would honor her? Or even what kind of scene, what kind of paragraph? And the stuff percolates up. I don't go around the world, And this is funny because I teach memoir and I teach fiction, and I so encourage journaling, and I have different journals, but I'm not going around the world seeking a direct grab, right, for my stories. I live, and when I feel deeply, I write.
This book has a lot of struggle, a lot of hardship, and she and her brother are trying to figure out something they can do to help with that. But there's also a lot of joy and appreciation of what she has in her life. She has these hobbies and interests that really get her through and that end up being a real help to her and help to the family. One thing is her seed collection or museum that she keeps even throughout the drought of all the things that they grow on the farm. And was there an inspiration for that, or are there things in your life, interests that keep you going in the same way, especially in a time like this?
I believe the only way we stay alive is to be to be passionate about the lives we have. And so we have a responsibility to find those things that make us care. You know, and I have a garden, and it looked better than it does right now at one time. But I do love seeds. I love the geometry of seeds. I love the symbolism of seeds. There's a scene, there are many times in the book, for example, that Sarah and her brother Hawk are sitting on the roof and looking out. It's sort of like a pier. Um, I have been obsessed with that image since I was a kid in Woodbine, Delaware, and my brother and I would go out on the roof and just watch the sky. And I've taken the feeling of that moment to other places in my books, but here it was a chance to return to it over and over again. And so sky watching, they have what they call a spyglass. My brother is a brilliant and beautiful, among other things. He used to have a telescope and he could point to where things were. So I'm always taking things that I've loved myself or loved doing with another and putting that love into the books.
A big part of this book revolves around the mystery of this man, the Mister, who's living on Sarah and Hawk's farm, who, I don't think this is giving anything away, is an author, an artist. Do you find that you're often looking for mysteries or untold stories, things that might be undercover in your life around you?
I think that everything is a mystery, Ben. And there's an opportunity always to press a little further towards what we know. In the case of the Mister, yes, he's an artist of wordless picture books. And these kids, he arrives, he lives in a silo, a renovated silo. Kids have no idea why he's there. They've been told to leave him alone.
Right.
And he's a really important symbol for me, about choosing to create the things that you want to leave behind. And these young kids recognize that if perhaps they can't save themselves, they might be able to do something for this mysterious the Mister. And in the act of doing for another, a greater community is born. It is a mystery, but it's more, it's a mystery, it's the kind of ordinary mystery that we live every day, if you know what I mean, of if I only thought about it a little more, if I only investigated a little more, I would know better.
What is some advice that you have for people starting to write that maybe haven't before, that might feel insecure if you write something and then you feel like, that wasn't worth it, or that's not an important detail, and you might feel silly when you come back to it, and have that process of reviewing what you've written?
The thing is that it's all worth it. And it all has value. And the second you put your crayon, your pen, your paint to the page, you're making something, you're expressing yourself. And please, my advice is don't censor yourself. Don't look over your own shoulder, not for a long time. Do enough of it that it becomes this thing you look forward to doing every day versus afraid of doing it. What can I make today? What story can I find? What detail? You know, it may be that in the first week of writing at home, some of these young writers, their job is simple. Find a single detail Write it down. What's the color of the spice in that jar? You know, what's the nature of the spider web that, you know, between the legs of the table and the chair? Write down the thing, then expand it a little each day until maybe that becomes a story. Maybe the spider in the spider web is the story, or the spice in a jar has, you know, something you can imagine a history for.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us at Greenlight about your novel, The Great Upending. If anyone wants to buy the book, you can go on to greenlightbookstore.com, search The Great Upending, or search Beth Kephart and find any of her books and easily add them to your cart and check out, and we will ship them right to your door. Ordering online is a great way to support your independent bookstores. Please go on to greenlightbookstore.com for more. Beth, thank you so much for joining us. It was such a lovely conversation, and congratulations on the publication of your new book.
Ben, writing this book over the several year period was all worth it because of this conversation. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you.
Well, take care and be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
I'd love that. We'll stay in touch. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.